That was Stephen Stanley with No Hopeless Soul. You're on 94.9 this afternoon. It is 14 minutes past 4 and it's time for our Creation Ministries International speaker. And this afternoon we have Dr. Don Batten on the line. Good afternoon, Dr. Don.
Good afternoon, Mick. How you going?
Awesome. It's great to have you on the line. And I heard, little birdie told me that you've just been in New Caledonia.
Correct, yes. Parlez-vous français?
No, I don't understand. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all in French, so my French is not good enough, so I had to go through an interpreter, which is a bit frustrating at times. But
so you were speaking there?
Oh, yeah, I was speaking there, yeah.
Oh, okay. And what were you speaking about?
Oh, about creation, evolution, origins, where we came from, that Darwin didn't explain where we came from.
Yes.
And we should believe the Bible's account of creation.
Oh, right.
So, yeah.
And any interesting questions from the New Caledonians?
Well, nothing new, but since there's quite a range of skin colour in New Caledonia, as you can imagine, ranging from the whitest of white to fairly dark, the question of skin colour was probably a fairly common question. How can we all have the different skin colours if we came from Noah and his family, according to the Bible? So that was a popular thing. I remember one guy at the university, he asked me that. There's a bunch of guys came to me afterwards and they were asking various questions, and one was about skin colour. And I got a photo of the group, and I was the whitest guy there, and there was all a range of tones of skin colour in the group. It was quite an amazing range. And when I explained to him about skin colour, he said, "That really makes a lot of sense. Thank you." Mm-hmm. And a big beam came across his face,
Yeah. Yeah.
It is a liberating thing for a lot of people, especially folk with darker skin. They've sort of bought this lie that, but you've probably seen the school textbooks. They've got the black ape stooped over and then gradually standing up to become a human being who happens to be a white guy.
Yes.
And what's the implication?
Yeah. Well, I have seen an alternative to that. It goes right through to a really tall black guy shooting a hoop.
That's a good twist on it, because that's. But the evolving into the white guy implies, of course, the black skin's closer to the apes.
Yes.
And that's why, Adam Goods got so offended when somebody made monkey gestures to him when he was playing AFL. Somebody from the crowd, a young woman, she. Thought she was being smart, obviously, but it was very offensive to him.
Yep.
But to realise that skin colour, skin deep, and there's just different amounts of the same stuff, it's liberating to a lot of people. To realise that I was talking to an Aboriginal guy down in Bendigo some years ago, and explaining this to him, and I said, you go to the blood bank and donate blood. Do you think you've got black blood and white blood? And he said, I never really thought about it. I said, no, we all got the same sort of blood. I mean, I could go to hospital and need a blood transfusion and get some guy from Central Africa as a donor. It's the skin colour, skin deep. Just we have the same skin colour. It's just different amounts of it. If you've got a lot of it, you're a black guy. If you don't have much, you're a pale face. That's about it.
Well, I've mentioned before I have a lot of freckles, so I think I'm sort of halfway between.
Well, yeah, you've got reddish freckles. That's actually due to a defective form of melanin. The melanin's the name of the brown colour we have in our skin. And I'm like you by the sound of it. I'm sort of got Scottish and Irish ancestry, and when I had a beard, it was red, and until everything went grey. But so you've got these reddish freckles. That's due to what's called pheomelanin, which is a defective form of melanin. And consequently, you and I probably should keep out of the sun, otherwise we get readily burnt.
Yes, I do. I get frazzled all the time. And of course, for the guys in New Caledonia, just for people to understand, New Caledonia, where you were, is actually closer than it is from Brisbane to Melbourne. And of course, Brisbane to Melbourne is not even half the distance across our country. So New Caledonia is really close. So when you're talking about skin colour, and you come from just over they'd probably call it the ditch. We say that to New Zealand, but we're not that far away. And we're still really close as far as everything else is concerned as well, except the colour.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. Well, it's only a 2-hour flight from Brisbane to Noumea, so it's not far away. Yeah. So anyway, we had a great time. This Christian group at the university organised a meeting. We had about 50 people there, and I talked about 5 miracles that atheists believe. Ooh. And I expected to get a bit of pushback, but actually I had sort of broken into 2 parts and all illustrated with a PowerPoint, and made the points about the miracles that atheists believe, and I was quite surprised at how well received it was.
Can you tell us what those miracles are?
Yeah, I can, just briefly, yeah. So the first one's the origin of the universe from nothing, and that's the first miracle. Yeah, the Big Bang. There was nothing and it exploded, and here we all are.
Yep.
This is the cosmic evolution idea. That's the first miracle. Mm-hmm. And you can, even a child knows that nothing doesn't do anything. Mm-hmm. If I said to you, the chair, I assume you're sitting on a chair. I said to you, the chair you're sitting on, nobody made it. It just made itself. You'd say you need a psychiatrist.
Yes.
But these people tell us that the universe just made itself with no cause whatsoever.
Yes, that's definitely a miracle. Yep.
It's a huge miracle. It's actually more than a miracle because it's actually magic.
Yeah, because there was no one to even make the miracle.
That's right. Yeah, miracles have a miracle worker, and I believe in miracles because God can do miracles, but God's able to do miracles, but nothing doesn't do miracles.
Yes.
So there's a fundamental problem with the story, and people just don't. I think it's because it's couched in highfalutin scientific terms. I think it must be true. Like they talk about a cosmic, and they talk about a quantum fluctuation. Oh, that must be scientific.
Yeah,
but it's just a fancy way of saying nothing. Nothing produced everything.
Yep.
And so that's the first one, the origin of the universe, and there's the origin of stars. Oh, there's 3 other miracles within the first second of the Big Bang, but we don't need to go there.
Yep.
But then there's the origin of stars, and there's 2 types of stars. There's stars of hydrogen helium stars, and they're supposedly the first things formed in the Big Bang. But the problem is you've got to leave gases produced by the Big Bang, or there's elements produced by the Big Bang flying apart at huge speed, and you've sort of got to try and get them to come together to form a star. So, you put gas in a space, it expands to fill the space. It doesn't come together. Gas doesn't come together naturally. So they've got to try and work out a way of getting the gas to come together to form the star. And so they invoke this magical stuff called dark matter. And dark matter they've been looking for 40 or 50 years, and they haven't found any evidence for it except that the Big Bang needs it.
It's something that is there to make a theory work, but it's something they've never found, right. In which case the theory doesn't really work. That's right, yeah. So there've been some very clever experiments to try and find this mysterious dark matter, but no one's found it. Yeah. So then it's the formation of stars, and then there's other types of stars like our sun, which has heavier elements like lithium, beryllium, boron, carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, fluorine. All the elements of the periodic table are in our sun, whereas they're not in hydrogen helium stars. So where they come from? Well, those elements must have come from exploding stars of hydrogen, which forced the hydrogen atoms together with some helium to make all the heavier elements. And so this idea that supernovas of these hydrogen stars blasted these elements together to form heavier elements, and they formed the heavy stars, or the metallic stars, they call them, like our sun. So that's the story. Okay, but so again, you're a Bachelor of Science. You should understand, can that actually happen? No, well, this is a problem because you need so many of these hydrogen stars to go supernova and otherwise explode, and they have to be in close proximity, just the right sort of close proximity, for them to theoretically be able to do this magic. And you've got billions of these, they're called metallic stars with all these heavier elements. And you've got billions of these, and so you need
trillions of these supernovas going off in the right spots, just happen to be together, and it's more magic, really. So, and then the third big miracle is the origin of life.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they haven't got a clue how life could make itself. Even the simplest living thing, like the simplest bacterium that can reproduce itself, is phenomenally complex and full of information. Even the simplest bacterium that can reproduce is the DNA has information equivalent to a book the size of a Bible.
Yes.
And and books of information, or a book of information like the Bible, just doesn't come about by accidents in chemistry. It comes about from intelligence, but they're not allowed to have any intelligence because you can't believe in God, you see.
Mm.
So you have to believe that all this information came about by some sort of series of lucky accidents in the chemical soup.
Wow.
Which is really more magic.
Wow.
So there's the origin of life, and then there's the origin of the diversity of life. So
can we go into the next one shortly? We're going to have to go into a little break. Already we've got 3. I do have to ask, though, can we get this information on creation.com?
You can. There's actually an article called 5 Atheist Miracles.
Wow. Okay, well, we'll come back to that shortly. We are with Dr. Don Batten, who is a scientist. He knows what he's talking about, and he's talking about, so far, 5 miracles that atheists must believe. It's really, really exciting. You're on 94.9. It is 23 minutes to 5, and we have Dr. Don Batten on the line, who's just been over to, I believe, New Caledonia, was it, or Vanuatu? I've just forgotten which one it was.
New Caledonia, the French-speaking one.
Oh, the French, and that's the one with Noumea in it. Yeah, okay, got it.
Oh, correct. Yeah. Yeah.
And he's been speaking to people about all sorts of things, and I just hit him up on one of the things that they spoke about was 5 miracles that atheists believe. And I thought that sounded really interesting. And so far, we've got to 3 of them. Can you just recap those first 3 for us, please, Dr. Don?
Well, the first one's the origin of the universe from nothing, and then the origin of stars from the Big Bang. It's a huge problem and more magic involved there. And then the origin of life, which is a huge amount of magic involved there. So that's the first 3. First 3 things that if you're not going to believe in a creator who made everything, you have to believe something like this about how it all came to be, or bury your head in the sand and not think about it. That's another option, I guess.
Yes, and of course, it's instead of having a creator create it, and of course, a lot of atheists go, "Oh, how could a creator do that?" Instead, they believe nothing created it.
That's effectively what they end up with. Yeah, nothing produced everything with no cause whatsoever.
Yeah, and so what's number 4?
Well, number 4 is the diversity of life. So we don't just have bacteria, we've got enormous diversity of life. Everything from amoeba to astronauts and everything in between.
Mm.
And, we're supposed to have come from worms, they say. So bacteria evolved into something with a cell nucleus like an amoeba, and amoeba became all the complex animals and plants and everything came from some amoeba, and then eventually worms evolved, and then about 300 million years ago worms started changing into all the animals with a backbone. So everything with a backbone came from worms, according to the story. And so our ancestors were once worms. So people are aware of the idea of apes changing into people, but it goes much further than that. It's apes came from the worms, and of course through a whole supposed series of transitional forms for which there's no evidence in the fossil record. And of course there's no evidence in living things that one thing could change into another. One of the most established principles of biology that everybody understands is that like begets like. When humans produce babies, they produce human babies, not something else. And chimps produce chimp babies, and dogs produce dog babies, and et cetera, et cetera. But evolution is a story that one thing can change into another given enough time.
Now, of course, we've seen things like, there's been babies that have been born without arms or without hands, and we've seen a lot of changes in that regard. But you're a scientist, We've seen changes where information is missing and things tend to be missing or deformed, which is a loss of information. Have you ever seen a change where there's a gain in information?
No, not in the sense of producing a feature that wasn't there previously. For example, evolution needs to explain the origin of blood where there wasn't blood before, the origin of nerves where there weren't there before, the origin of all sorts of biochemical pathways with multiple enzymes and things where they weren't there before. And there's nothing like that that's observed in science that says that there's a natural process that can do that. It's circular reasoning that applies to this. They say, we're here, it must have happened. You say, but, God created things. Oh, no, you're not allowed to believe in God. That's not scientific. Well, there's the thing, there's the great founders of modern science were people like Isaac Newton, and in biology, in microbiology, it was Louis Pasteur, for example, and these people were devout Christians. So, and they readily attributed the creation to the creator. They didn't try to imagine it just made itself. So what's happened is that atheists have hijacked science to try and make it say something it never said. It never actually can say either that they can explain everything without God. They can't.
Wow, that's interesting.
So that's the fourth great miracle that atheists believe is the origin of the diversity of life, including you and me and elephants and mice and mango trees, and everything just made itself from some sort of bacterium that made itself from the chemicals that came about from the Big Bang.
Wow. Yeah, and it only happened in one place.
I don't have enough faith to be an atheist.
Yes, absolutely. So have we done number 5?
No, we haven't done number 5. That was number 4.
That was number 4, yeah.
So number 5 is the origin of love, intellect, mind, altruism, all those things that make us human. And, of course, animals have a mind as well. But where does thought come from? How can thought arise out of chemistry and physics? How can love come from chemistry and physics? How can morality come from chemistry and physics? This is a leap in the dark also for the atheist to suggest that these things have any basis other than in their imagination. So, for example, how do we know it's wrong to torture babies? And everyone says, oh, it's obvious. No, well, it's not obvious. There are demented people in the world who think it's okay to torture people and do such horrible things. So why is it wrong? It can't get that from... How can you get what is right or what ought to be from physics and chemistry? Physics and chemistry doesn't have any pronouncements about what's right and wrong. And all the atheist has is physics and chemistry. They don't have anything else. But, of course, we have a moral lawgiver who's the creator of the universe, and that's where morals come from. That's where mind and morality come from. And, we're made in the image of God. We're not made in the image of chemistry. We're made in the image of God. So,
yeah,
that's the 5th miracle.
Wow. You're right. It takes more faith to believe in that than it does than a creator actually doing that for you.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you read some of the great, the well-known atheists, Richard Dawkins and all these people. They readily admit that there's no purpose or meaning to life in an evolutionary world. They admit that, but say, well, you just suck it in and make the best of it,
Yeah, wow.
It's very sad, really. And this is what our young people are being indoctrinated with at school and university, is this evolutionary mindset that, the 3 F's of atheism. You've heard of those?
No.
The first F is our existence is a fluke. And the second F is, therefore, life is a farce. And when you die, you become fertilizer.
Yeah. Well, that's it, and it makes life so sad for some people. You can understand why things like suicide rates have been so high in the Western world. People just living without a cause, without a belief in anything,
without a meaning and purpose to life. That's right.
Yeah.
One of the great Christian catechisms says the main purpose of man, or the main end of man, is to love God and to enjoy Him forever. So that's the thing. And it's enjoyment of God. And the Bible talks often about this, about we enjoy God. And Jesus in John 10 verse 10 said he came that we might have life and have it abundantly.
Yeah.
So it's a wonderful thing, actually. It's an absolutely wonderful thing that God provides purpose and meaning in life.
Now, you are a PhD in plant science. Have you ever seen a plant change from one plant to another? I mean, it's got to be easier with plants than it is with like animals and humans. But have you ever seen plants change from one to another?
Well, within the created kind, like the Bible talks about God creating different kinds of things, and 10 times in Genesis chapter 1 it says different kinds of things are made to reproduce after their kind. So I've done research on things like lychees and mangoes and custard apples and things like that, and breeding them and trying to develop better types and things. So within the lychee family, which is Sapondaceae, there's quite a few different species and genera. And one of the things that we did with those, we took a longone and a lychee and we hybridised the two. So we were able to cross them. And we've got a hybrid between the two, which is interesting. And that to me indicates that the created kind that God created was probably at the level of the family here, where the Sapondaceae, which is lychees, longones, rambutans, palosanes, a whole lot of different fruit, many of which are delightful to eat, are all actually in the same created kind. And so you've got this diversity within the created kind, different species, different genera, but you can't change a lychee into a mango. You know, that's a different kind, different created kind.
It's like changing a cat to a dog.
They're like changing a cat to a dog. You get varieties of cats, you can get varieties of dogs or wolves, but you don't get a dog changing into a cat or vice versa. That's the thing, because there's boundaries between the different created kinds that you can't just jump from one to the other. But there needs a whole lot of new genetic information, which there's no mechanism to create it.
Whereas an evolutionist would believe that must have somehow happened.
Yeah, well, they sort of have to believe it happened, because otherwise you go towards believing in God, and of course you can't go there. So that's what it's about. It's all about God, really. It's not about the evidence. It's about God.
Yeah. Well, it's been another awesome afternoon, but I have to ask, before you go, those 5, I guess, miracles that atheists believe, can you tell us how people can find that sort of information?
Well, if you go to creation.com, there's an article which spells it all out, and it's actually called Five Miracles Atheists Believe. That's the title of the article. If you just look up 5 miracles, you should find it quite easily. You'll also find on our YouTube channel, Creation Ministries International YouTube channel, there's a series of videos we've just posted about this topic. So there's a longer video and on Instagram and so on, there's a whole lot of short videos, like less than a minute, dealing with these topics. So it's quite a bit of material there that's helpful to people. Yeah,
and of course on the creation.com page, it is it's pretty simple to use. If you look down the page and scroll down, you'll find different stories, but up in the top right-hand corner, there's a little magnifying glass. Just click on that and you can type anything that you're looking for, like any questions, just type them in, and there's literally thousands, tens of thousands of bits of information on the creation.com website. And, well, that one, I think, was absolutely brilliant. Dr. Don, I thank you so much. 5 miracles that atheists must have believed in for us to have what we have today. Yeah. Very interesting, isn't it? You are on 94.9. Thank you so much, Dr. Don. Another awesome week, and we look forward to our next chat with you.
Thanks, Mick. Bless your heaps.